Hi, John Harper here. Wanted to share with you a comment that I received on one of my websites the other day. I thought it was just wonderful. It reflects a place many of us find ourselves when we're seeking something deeper in our lives. I know that 30 years ago, it could have been my very words that I was reading. But before I get into it, if you would, take a moment and subscribe to this channel. I am going to be producing a lot more content for this YouTube channel. So I'm titling this video, "This is Suffering." And here's the comment. I enjoy reading your blog posts and would like to subscribe. Inquiry has been a deep part of my life for a few years now, and the unraveling of deep and seemingly strong ego structures of personality that keep me confined and living from a limited and narrow framework, keeping me disconnected from my deep heart. This is suffering. The mystery for me is this: how can I connect more deeply with my feeling heart and be present with these structures in a way that dismantles and dissolves them into the absolute, so I can be this heart and perceive reality through this lens of deep compassion, love, objectivity, and openness. I'm telling you, these could have been my words 30 years ago. So I wanted to address some of these points. Let's talk about strong ego structure first of all. So as far as we know, ego is part of the normal development of the soul. And a healthy process of ego development leaves everyone with a strong ego. A brittle ego is an issue. In the diamond approach, we do a little intake questionnaire for people, and part of the reason for that is to see if there are any apparent, obvious issues with ego structure. We need to have a strong ego structure to go through the process of dissolving it. Sounds weird, I know, but that's the situation. A strong ego can disintegrate, then come back together. Disintegrate and come back together. And it's in that process of disintegrating and come back together that more and more transparency is developed in the ego structure. And also a lot more resiliency. First few times can be problematic and scary at times. After that, it's just another lap around the pool. So what I would suggest is, if you find yourself in a situation where you think you have too strong of an ego, first of all, explore, what does that mean to you? What does strong ego mean? How do you experience its strength? And specifically, how do you experience it as a problem? Those are areas of inquiry and exploration that one can use to open up and see one's position or positions on that whole situation. So the issue of living from a limited and narrow framework. We all know, at least intellectually, that life is not limited by structures only formed by them. I remember 25 years ago, I was in a period of my life where for a couple of years I was just writing poetry like crazy. I don't know if it was any good. I liked it. Others seemed to enjoy it. But in that 2-year period of creativity, I remember wondering if I could create some structure to confine the limits of that poetry. And I would do just crazy things. I would build these strange structures, and my, heart, mind, hand just filled them up with poetry right within that structure. And that allowed me to see that Life could care less about the structure. It'll fill it up 100%. It doesn't stop the impact of love, true nature, creativity. Structures are just fine, and they're useful. They're useful tools. We need structures to do things in this life and in other realms and dimensions. So there's a shift in perspective that needs to happen in regards to ego structures being a problem. Most of the problems that I've run into are resistances and misunderstandings. And so what I found and discovered is life has this magic lubricant. In the diamond approach, we sometimes call it the elixir of enlightenment. And there is absolutely no crack too small that this lubricant can't get in there and work its magic. This person goes on to say, how can I connect more deeply with my feeling heart and be present with these structures in a way that dismantles and dissolves them into the absolute? Well, let's be clear. These structures and all other structures are part of the absolute. Everything is coming out of the absolute. So let's just use that knowledge to allow ourselves to relax a little bit. The next thing is reject nothing, even our state of rejection. So the way that I read this, how can I connect more deeply and be present with in a way that dismantles and dissolves them, can have a little flavor of rejection in it. So we don't want to reject what's happening to us. We want to open things up and explore them. And the type of exploration that we're trying to encourage and be open to is allowing ourselves to be with the lived experience of what's happening to us. So that means if there's resistance, if I'm concrete and feeling like nothing's going to give, I want to get into that concrete. I want to feel what it does to me. And more importantly, I want to feel the effect that it has and the response from my heart and soul. Does it make me sad? Do I feel isolated? I need to open my response to those situations and explore them. So being honest and open to where we are is where we begin the exploration every moment, every time something shifts. Be honest and open to where we are. And this will allow us to connect more deeply to our experience. We need to let go of seeking how to be and be more with the longing that's in us. Because the longing is coming from someplace real in us. It can also be coming from a place of reactivity, but exploring it will clarify that and bring us closer and closer to the real dynamism of what's happening within us. So I can be this heart, this person says. Well, we all know the heart is just simply amazing. And often our difficulties are due to the activation of the soul child. The soul child feels a lot of vulnerability. It feels overwhelmed most often. It has a lot of the foundational holes that exist within our psyche. And around those holes we have needs and wants that never got met. And so being with our heart means inviting our past with the soul child in and opening that up for exploration. And I just want to say that all of this is good news. I know it can not feel like that, but if you take a moment to read back through what this person has written, it's very specific. This person is aware of what's happening with them. some deep knowledge about their situation and process. So this lens that we're hoping to open and perceive reality through opens naturally. The difficulties we run into, the struggles that we're having that we take to be negative, are actually part of a positive process that's happening. And the more that we can allow the process to happen, instead of rejecting and wanting something else to happen, the more that we allow, the more the process works on us. The more sanding, the more we're in that cauldron, the more we will be refined and transformed into what we truly long to be. So when we're thinking we want to open up and perceive reality through a lens of deep compassion, love, objectivity, and openness, consider this. The heart knows what it longs for. If you know, if we are in touch with that longing in the heart, we're there in a way. What is it that we're looking for that is going to give us some kind of confirmation that we're there? Kind of rejoice and be with that longing, with that ruin of the heart, as Rumi and other saints and poets say. So let me say a few things about the process of transformation. I think I was into the diamond approach maybe 15 years, which means I was on a spiritual path for about 34 years before I came to this realization. We can't change. All the machinations I went through trying to find the perfect technique or methodology or spiritual exercise or piece of knowledge or perspective that was going to help me to change they weren't in vain. I learned a lot from them, but we can't take that and change what really needs to change. What needs to change, what wants to use that, is what needs to change. That's the piece that's in the way. But the good news is we can be changed. And that is more a process of allowing. And the more that we can embrace that process wholeheartedly with everything that we've got, the more fluid that process will be. So think of the metaphor with a caterpillar that comes up constantly. A caterpillar doesn't decide it wants to change. It's a biological process of transformation that just happens in a stage-appropriate method. I had a friend one time that told me about an experience a friend of his had. So this is a secondhand story, and it has to do with the emperor moth. This friend of my friend's was walking through the woods and saw a cocoon and what turned out to be an emperor moth struggling to get out of this cocoon. And at the end of the cocoon is a very tight, hard, shell-like aperture where that caterpillar struggles to emerge from. And as this person watched this moth going through this struggle, he felt a lot of compassion for that moth and took out his Swiss Army knife and opened up that cocoon to allow the moth just to come out. But what fell out was just a big blob of caterpillar. That process that caterpillar goes through to struggle and push itself and pull itself through that aperture is what's needed to form the body from a blob of caterpillar into the body of the moth. And this is the process that we need to go through. And human spiritual transformation is a biological, a psychological, and a spiritual transformation. It's all three of those. And we know this now through our neuroscience, what we're discovering there, because part of what happens in the process of transformation is we do a lot of rewiring in our brain. And the Sufis have known this for a long time. There's a Sufi story about the two heaps. You know, when we start out the process of transformation, all of our experience forms this big heap, or most of our experience is this big heap of experience. And most of it is in the realm of the ego. And as we learn and engage and apply ourselves to our spiritual path and the practices, it's like taking a grain of sand and starting a new pile of our essential work, one grain at a time, and one grain at a time. And it takes quite a while for that other pile to gather enough mass that it attracts or magnetizes our consciousness in a way that it becomes easier and easier to move to that pile, to want to engage that pile. It's like that pile starts developing its own gravitational force. So I think this is a wonderful comment by this person. It mirrors part of my own process of unfoldment and some of the places where I found myself. I think a lot of people can relate to it, and that's why I thought I would put it up in this format so that maybe it can ease the process for some people. I have a lot of love and appreciation for somebody sharing this type of content with myself and publicly posting it so that others can benefit from it. And I'm going to leave you with a poem from a Turkish Sufi poet from the 12th or 13th century that I really enjoy, Yunus Emre. And I'm not going to read that poem, but I will put it in the comments section below this video. And again, stay tuned to this channel, more videos to come.